Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You're listening to episode 8 of our series, Wisdom Unveiled. We're here to, shortcut that learning curve on some really foundational philosophy. And today we are diving deep into the frankly staggering insights of the transcendent philosopher Mulla Sadra. Just a quick note before we jump in, because these ideas are incredibly subtle. Our discussion today draws heavily on conversations with leading Iranian philosophers, people like Dr. Ebrahim Dinani and Dr. Esmail Mansouri Larijani. We're working from translations and reproductions of their discussions, so if perhaps some nuance from the original Persian doesn't come through perfectly, please, we do apologize in advance for any small discrepancies. Okay, so our mission today, to tackle one of philosophy's oldest, most persistent riddles. What exactly is the relationship between you, the physical body, and, well, you, the self? The soul, the spirit, consciousness, whatever term you use. For centuries, this apparent split, this duality, just plagued thinkers. Then came Sadra, proposing a solution so radical it genuinely shook the intellectual world. It's captured in this phrase, Jismaniyat al-Laduth wa Ru'yat al-Baqa.
Which translates roughly to material origin, spiritual continuation.
Right, material origin, spiritual continuation.
And to really feel why that was so revolutionary, you first have to appreciate the sheer difficulty of this dualism problem historically.
Yeah.
Thinkers before Sadra, they really tied themselves in knots trying to connect these two seemingly utterly different things.
Yeah.
Non-physical mind or soul and, dense physical matter.
It's the classic ghost in the machine problem, isn't it? If they're fundamentally different substances, how on earth do they interact? How does the ghost drive the machine?
Precisely. How do they talk to each other? That was the crux of it.
Okay, so that sets up the challenge perfectly. Let's get into how Sadra approached this. We need to start, I think, with his basic framework, what the sources lay out as the first key area, redefining existence itself. He makes this crucial distinction, doesn't he, between wujud and mawjudat.
Yes. Absolutely fundamental. Wujud, often translated as existence with a capital E, or being itself. It's the absolute, singular, unbounded reality, the infinite source underlying everything.
And mawjudat.
Mawjudat are the specific, individual, existent things. You, me, this microphone, the chair you might be sitting on. Limited, conditioned things.
Our existence is borrowed, in a sense. Limited manifestations of that primary wujud.
Exactly. And the big mistake thinkers like Avicenna, or much later someone like Descartes in the West, made was focusing on the body and soul as two separate mawjudat, two distinct things that somehow needed to be glued or tied together.
They got bogged down in trying to categorize the type of relationship.
Yes, they obsessed over it. Is it chemical, like hydrogen and oxygen making water? No. Is it physical contact? No. Mathematical. Servant and master.
Container and contain, like water in a jar?
No. None of these analogies worked. Our sources are very clear on why they failed.
Why? What was the fundamental flaw in those comparisons?
Because, you see, the soul and body, if conceived as separate entities, aren't just two different elements. They belong to two completely different worlds or realms of existence. You can mix water and sugar, maybe, because they're both physical. But you can't just mechanically combine the world of pure matter and the world of pure spirit if you start by assuming they are independent, separate things. They aren't of the same genus, philosophically speaking. Fundamentally incomparable.
Okay, so if all the usual categories fail, how do we even begin to talk about this connection?
Well, the comparison Sadra and others sometimes use, though they caution against taking it too literally, is that the connection is somewhat analogous to the relationship between God and the universe.
Wow, okay.
It's described as itial by case, a connection without qualification or comparison, meaning the bond is utterly unique, absolute. It defies our ordinary logic because it somehow has to link the purely material to the fundamentally immaterial without reducing one to the other.
So that classic dualistic path, trying to glue two separate things together, was essentially a dead end.
Pretty much, yes.
Which brings us squarely to Sadra's radical alternative. This is the core doctrine we mentioned. Material origin, spiritual continuation. Jismaniyat al-Laduth wa Ru'yat al-Baqa. Let's unpack that.
Right. Sadra completely flips the perspective.
Yeah.
He insists that the human being's origin, the voduth, is jism, meaning body or matter only.
Only matter.
At the very beginning, yes. Think of the embryo, the fetus. At that point of creation, Sadra argues, the human is only matter. The soul and body aren't two separate things that come together. The human being starts as one thing, matter.
Okay, hold on. If the human starts as purely material, how does that not just make Sadra a materialist? Where does the spirit or soul actually come from? This seems huge because it directly contradicts that common idea of, a pre-existing spiritual dove descending into the body at some point.
Exactly. That's the radical shift. The soul doesn't enter from outside. It has to emerge from within the matter itself. That material origin must somehow transition into spiritual subsistence. That's the Runaniyat al-Baqa part. The body isn't just a passive container. It's the active engine, the very site of the soul's generation.
The body generates the soul.
In a manner of speaking, yes. It develops toward soulness.
So the body itself must possess some kind of internal dynamic principle, a mechanism that drives it upward, so to speak, from being just matter towards becoming spiritual. What is that driving force?
Now we get to the absolute linchpin of his system.
Right.
Transubstantial motion, or
al-Jawhariyyah.
This is Sadra's unique concept of motion. It defines existence itself as this gradual, continuous, progressive emergence, moving from potentiality towards actuality. But crucially, it's motion within the very substance of a thing, transforming its essence.
Okay, let's be really clear what this isn't, because motion makes us think of, I don't know, a car driving down the road or a planet orbiting the sun.
Right. It's not that kind of motion. It's not mechanical. It's not translational, moving from point A to point B. It's not merely temporal change. It's not horizontal movement through space.
So what kind of motion is it?
Sadra describes it as vertical motion. Think of it as moving upwards in terms of complexity, subtlety, and perfection. It's a transformation in the thing's fundamental nature, its substance or jawhar. He uses this powerful phrase, tajassum ila tarawu.
Tajassum ila tarawu, meaning?
Embodiment towards spirituality. The material body itself, through this constant internal vertical motion, is continually developing, refining itself, becoming increasingly subtle, more aware, more spiritual.
That's fascinating. The sources link this to Rumi's famous lines, don't they? The idea of the spiritual ladder.
Exactly. Rumi's, I died from the inorganic and became the plant. I died from the plant and became the animal. I died from the animal and became man. That captures the essence of al-Jawhariyyah, this continuous state of self-surpassing transformation. It's not about receiving something external. It's about unfolding potential from within.
So the matter itself develops the capacity for what Sadra calls Morafat's spiritual awareness or knowledge.
Precisely. It's a continuous self-creation where the material foundation gives rise to and supports the emerging spiritual reality. The body isn't left behind. It's the very ground of the transformation.
Okay, this raises a significant philosophical question, moving into the area of multiplicity and individuation. If the soul emerges from matter through this universal process, al-Jawhariyyah, how do we end up with millions, billions of distinct individual souls? If spirit is ultimately one or emerges via one process, why am I me and you are you? Why Zayd versus Amr, as the classic texts put it?
And this is actually one of Sadra's strongest arguments against the old dualism. Think about it. If souls were pure, pre-existing immaterial entities, mujaradat, existing before bodies, how could they be individually distinct?
What would make them different?
Exactly. Pure intelligences, pure forms, are generally thought to have distinction only by their type or species, their mahiyya, not by individual identity. There's nothing material or specific to differentiate one pure intellect from another of the same kind.
So individuality needs something else.
Sadra argues that true individual distinction, tamayuz fardi, the thing that makes your specific consciousness unique to you, can only be forged during and through this transformative journey within the material world. The specific path of al-Jawhariyyah shapes the individual.
Wow. So the material world isn't a prison for the soul, as some might see it. It's actually the necessary crucible for forging our unique identity.
Absolutely. The material journey is the indispensable condition for individuation. Without it, we wouldn't be distinct persons.
Okay, but that raises a potentially tricky point. Many religious traditions, including Islamic ones, have narrations riwayat that strongly suggest souls did exist in some form before bodies. How does Sadra square his view of a purely material origin with these widely accepted texts?
He handles this very, very carefully. And brilliantly, many would say. He doesn't simply dismiss those narrations. He agrees that, yes, the essence or potential of souls existed prior to their physical embodiment.
But not as individual souls.
Not as the distinct individual nafs, the personal soul as we experience it now. He argues that pre-existence was in a state he calls kinyat aklani, a kind of intellectual existence.
Intellectual existence.
meaning they existed within the realm of the divine intellects or the universal forms, almost like blueprints or potentialities within the divine mind. Think of the Quranic phrase, naftu fihi min ro, I breathe into him of my spirit. Sadra interprets this spirit as referring to that universal intellectual principle, not a preformed individual soul specific to, say, Adam alone at that moment.
Okay, so the potential for Zaid's soul existed eternally, maybe in God's knowledge, but the actual individual conscious soul of Zaid only began its journey, its individuation, when it started its Harakat al-Jawhariyyah within the material world.
That's precisely the reconciliation he offers. The individual self, your specific I, starts purely materially and matures towards spirituality through its engagement with the material world via this transubstantial motion.
This entire journey of self-creation, from matter to spirit, becoming an individual, it brings us to a final, perhaps the most profound and paradoxical concept in this whole discussion. If the self is built up through this continuous transformation, why is Sadra, and the mystical path generally, then insist on the paradox of self-annihilation or Fanā? It sounds completely counterintuitive, like the ultimate goal is spiritual suicide, destroying the very self you've just painstakingly described as emerging and individuating.
It sounds like that, absolutely. And it's a common misunderstanding. But Fanā is crucial, and it only seems destructive if we mistake what is being annihilated.
Okay.
Fanā is emphatically not the destruction of your actual, genuine consciousness or awareness. It's not about ceasing to exist. It is rather an epistemological annihilation.
Epistemological, meaning related to knowledge.
Yes. It's the destruction of a false belief about the self, the shattering of an illusion.
An illusion? And what is this fundamental illusion we hold about ourselves, according to Sadra?
The illusion lies in granting alat, which means fundamental reality, originality, or authenticity to the quid.
Alat to the quid. Okay, those are technical terms. What's the quid? What does that mean in practice? Give us some concrete examples.
The quid is essentially the limitation, the boundary, the condition. It's anything temporary, relative, or accidental that we mistakenly identify as our ultimate real self. Think about it. Your job title. Is that really you, fundamentally?
Yeah.
Your bank account balance, your social status, your physical appearance, which changes over time, your nationality, even your fears, your anxieties, your current political opinions.
All the labels and roles we adopt.
Exactly. These are all keyed, plural of quid. They are temporary conditions, accidents, and philosophical terms. They give you a specific, limited shape in the world. But they are not the underlying substance, not the ultimate reality.
So if I deeply believe that my success as, say, a podcaster is my ultimate reality, my alalit, then if the podcast fails, I feel annihilated, crushed.
Precisely. Because you've given ultimate value allied to something temporary and limited, a quid.
So Fanā's realizing that the job title, the success, the failure, the social role, these were just masks, temporary boundaries. They were never the real core self to begin with.
Yes, it's the profound realization that the individual wave was never truly separate from the ocean being wujud, absolute being. The wave is a temporary form, a quid, but its reality is entirely dependent on and ultimately inseparable from the boundless ocean. Fanā means you stop identifying solely with the finite temporary shape of the wave. You recognize that your deepest reality is grounded in and partakes of the limitless absolute. It is liberation from that false, constricted identification.
Seeing through the limits. And what does Sadra say we need to achieve this? It sounds intellectually demanding, but also maybe something more.
It absolutely requires an integrated approach. It demands both rigorous, will, reason, intellect, and committed aman, often translated as faith, but maybe better here as deep commitment or trust.
Reason and commitment, how do they work together here?
Reason, will, is essential for the analysis. It's the tool that allows you to intellectually pierce through the appearances, to see that the limitations, the quid, are indeed just temporary conditions and not the fundamental reality. Reason has to do the critical work of deconstruction.
It shows you the illusion is an illusion.
Exactly. But intellectual understanding alone might not be enough to shift your entire being. That's where aman, or commitment, comes in.
And what does aman do?
Aman is the necessary binding of the heart, the orientation of your deepest reliance and devotion. It means consciously directing that ultimate commitment only towards the mutlaq, the absolute reality, wujud, and away from the relative limits. If your ultimate commitment, your security, your sense of worth, is fundamentally tied to a temporary quid like your wealth, your status, even your own perceived spiritual progress, then, from this perspective, you're committing a subtle form of polytheism, You're giving ultimate reality and value to a limitation, instead of to the truly limitless.
That's incredibly profound. So Sadra's achievement looking back is just immense. He seems to have resolved this age-old mind-body dilemma, not by sticking two things together, but by redefining the self as this dynamic, unified process, a continual spiritual emergence from matter, driven by transubstantial motion, culminating in the liberation of Fanā, the seeing through of all temporary limits. Which leads us to a final thought, really a question for you, the learner, to take away from this deep dive, drawn right from Sadra's insights. As you navigate your own life, this ongoing transformation that Sadra describes, consider this. Where might you be mistakenly granting ayalat, that sense of ultimate reality and authenticity to equate, to some temporary condition, role, label, or boundary in your life? What mask, what limitation needs to be intellectually seen through, perhaps today, for you to begin grasping the truly boundless reality of wujud that lies beneath it all?
Thank you for joining us on this exploration. It's deep water, but we hope this journey into Sadra's thought helps illuminate your own path of understanding and transformation.